Hey everyone, and welcome to the GRC Room for Top 10 GRC Fails. I'm Mike Andrews here once again with Karina Clever of Clever Compliance, and we're happy to welcome the Data Diva, Debbie Reynolds, who's a top 8 data privacy expert and a top 30 cyber risk communicator. So before I pass it to Karina, just a couple of quick notes. Please feel free to leave comments and we'll get to them ASAP. If it's not live, it'll be shortly after. Also, if you haven't already, please stop by and check out the GRC Room YouTube channel and consider subscribing. On there, you'll be able to find this webinar, all our other ones, clips, and more. So without further ado, let me pass it to Karina for a brief introduction, then we'll learn more about the Data Diva.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Great intro as always. We are so excited to have the Data Diva here in the GRC room. Just honestly, super thrilled. Thank you for joining us. I'm Karina Clever, founder of Clever Compliance. We are a tool agnostic compliance management as a service provider. We do all kinds of different individualized service offering as well as stand-up GRC centers of excellence. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question to Debbie here. We've got a lot to go over. So many interesting top 10 fails. So tell us a little bit as part of you introing yourself about how you got into the GRC space and what prompted you to open up your own company.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much. I'm super excited to collaborate with Karina again and be here talking about GRC Fails. So I started my own company more than 6 years ago, even though over probably 20-ish plus years, I've always done data projects. So I got into privacy as a result of just my personal interest in privacy and data. And so I'm a technologist by trade, and I work a lot with companies on digital transformation. I used to say it was just transformation back then because you're moving from analog systems to digital systems. And so I've continued that work over the years. I started around the time that the European Union was starting to try to develop the general data protection regulation. I saw from companies that knew me from this other work. And so they started asking me about privacy because they knew I knew like all the laws and how you're supposed to do things. So the first big company that called me was like McDonald's Corporation. And I had to talk to their whole global litigation team about GDPR and why it was a big deal and why it didn't, it would have like all these extraterritorial impacts. But I've always been a data person at heart. And so that was just the path I decided to take. So I think of data as kind of like the middle of a wheel, and everything you do with data is kind of those spokes in a wheel. So for me, I think Karina and I clicked immediately because I love governance people. Because when I come into an organization, those are people, oh my God, you all, you're thinking the right way. I love this, So I think a lot of people, I think there are some similarities between privacy and governance because a lot of it builds on each other, right? So being able to do things right at the beginning saves you a lot of time downstream. So that's what I work on, more proactive things in privacy.
Wow, starting in privacy related to GDPR and helping a company like McDonald's. That's super very impressive. So Debbie, you're known for using the concept of demystifying privacy regulations and data protection. Can you tell us why this is so important?
Very cool question. So I always talk about demystification because I feel like a lot of people I don't know, maybe they make money on making things more complicated than they have to be. And so for me, it's all about preventing problems. So to me, the best way to solve a problem is to prevent it. So and a lot of things in the data space can be prevented, can be minimized, can be looked at in a different way. And so a lot of the problems and a lot of things we're going to talk about today are about things where if companies had really taken a step back and maybe done something differently, you near the start of a data journey, that would help them downstream. So for me, I try to times when you, and I'm sure Karina knows this, when you're talking with companies, you're talking with people at different levels of the organization, they may not be as geeky as we are. And so you being able to communicate that concept to anyone in the organization, understanding why it's important and what their part is very important. And I feel like a lot of people don't know how to do that.
That's super important. I'm gonna keep doing let's bring it down to the basics for every single one of these top 10 fails, and most of the other sessions that we have in the GRC room. It always comes back to basic competencies, right? Your basic access control, your basic security, perimeter security, your basic training. It always comes down to these basics that we're forgetting about, and it just makes it. I mean, we're chasing these shiny new tools, right? But we forget the basic governance principles, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of these fails all the time. So I think we should just jump into our very first topic. And when we were putting together this list of agenda, the list of things we're going to talk about, Debbie and I both got so excited about Marriott. So, Debbie, I'm going to let you lead this one, and then I'll chime in at the end. Debbie.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. I guess the first one we're going to talk about is the Marriott years, over 4 years. And so, and it's funny because I do 5-minute videos every week. And this is I think I've done a couple of videos on this. Marriott Star as part of that acquisition. And this happens a lot, and Karina can totally back me up on this. But a lot of times when companies are looking to acquire each other, they don't really or had an active data breach happening. And so they have to dig into what was happening. They got into a court case because people were suing them like, hey, you did these bad things with my data. And it really snowballed over many years. And I think they have more than one about it. They kind of threw themselves at the mercy of the court. They're like, hey, we just found out about this. What can we do to kind of do better? But that's still a really bad snowball that's been playing out over many years. What are your thoughts, Karina?
So I'm going to bring this one back down to the basics as well. And you're kind of coming in and out a little bit, Debbie. So I don't know, maybe you can close out some of the other stuff that you have happening on your workstation, because I try to close the outlooks and everything else while we're doing these. So just for bandwidth. So classic M&A situation, what we need to kind of come back to, and the basics that this comes back down to, is your inventory, right? You have your own inventory. You have your inventory of equipment. You have your inventory of data. You have your data classification in place, so you know where's your most important data, right? And then if you're acquiring a company, then you need to expect that same level of inventory to be present through that as part of that M&A. And now you start doing that merger, right? If you're being bought, the company buying you should demand this, right? People, process, technology, right? You're going to have headcount considerations. You're going to have procedural considerations. You're going to have technology considerations. The leak here was over 500 million passports, folks. I mean, think of the size. All of America is about 340 million people. So these are passports. These are addresses, right, that were already in place at the company that Marriott acquired that had a leak. So basic, simple considerations that you need to stop and do your inventory. what I have to add to that one.
Yeah, that's a great point. Karina talks about the fundamentals, and this one's related to like stolen credentials, and just played out over 4 years. So it shows you that monitoring wasn't what it should be. I don't know what's really more fundamental than those two things right there. Do either of you have anything to add before we move on to the next one? Okay, cool. The
No,
next
that's
one.
pretty. If anyone really wants to dig.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're going to move on to Facebook.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I was saying
second
if
one-
anyone really wants to dig into it, I think it'll be a really cool case study.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely is. I'm sure my data is among the 500 million since I stay there pretty often, but whatever. I have 75 subscriptions to credit monitoring, so I should be fine. The next one is a baby-sized company called Facebook. So this incident actually, it was exploited in 2019 due to an API flaw. The data set didn't even surface until 2021, so like two whole years later. So this goes to show that just because data doesn't hit the internet in a way that it shows you that it happened like last month, it could always pop up. So it's good to monitor current day and also go back through the logs and look at it. So this particular incident involved 533 million user records, 32 million of which were in the US, and it was related to just data scraping, API abuse via automated bots. The threat actors got phone numbers, Facebook IDs, names, birthdays, email addresses, and locations. And you may say, but Mike, they didn't get like bank account information. They didn't take money from people initially. There were no SSNs involved. But where this gets insidious is that an incident like this can have people put their guard down because their SSNs aren't exposed. But really, things like their phone numbers can be used for like SIM swaps. And then when someone has your phone number, that can be used to get into to do that password recovery of your email, your bank accounts. So there's a lot of layers and waves to this. So it was publicly reported in April 2021. Facebook did have a fine of $277 million by the Irish Data Protection Committee in November 2022. And you may be saying, well, I thought it was a lot more than that, but you're probably thinking of some of the other European fines because Facebook and the EU, they fight more than worst enemies in the UFC. But they did take action about this. They patched their API and they did rate limiting and took other steps to slow down data scraping, which is so big on platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn. LinkedIn's really vocal about this. And companies like Apollo have gotten in some trouble for this because LinkedIn knows the data is valuable, and if you're going to use it, they want to make money of that. They don't want you to just take up their bandwidth data scraping them. So for a company like Facebook, LinkedIn, or maybe people on this call, if you're susceptible to this sort of data scraping, you want to test for this sort of thing both internally and have some third parties test for this sort of thing, both in your test environments and in production, because this is preventable. So.
I want to add really quickly. I know that people who have been joining for a while have heard me say this a million times. Please take it home. Do not put pictures of your children or videos of your children online. Don't do it. Don't do it. It just is, they're cute as hell and you want the world to see them and you think the rest of the world adores them. Yes, they do. Whether it's your nephews, your nieces, your cousins, your aunties, don't put pictures of kids online. You're creating a digital identity for them they have not opted into. You're also creating a huge geolocation fence for where they live, what school they go to. You're giving them names. You're giving their name out there. Virgin Social Security numbers are very real things. I just had a colleague go through where his teenage daughter, older teen, starts applying for college. And in that process, through financial aid, discovers that she is delinquent on $300,000 worth of snowmobiles and trailers and pickup trucks out in another state from 5-6 years ago when she was like when she was like 10. She never made those purchases, but because they went out and advertised her so much online, it was so easy to recreate her identity, use her social security number, and create a credit profile record that now her college admissions is delayed by 2 years. The attorney costs, unexpected attorney costs for the family, are in the $50,000-$60,000 range just to try and straighten this out. So lock your kids' social security numbers down just like you do your own, and don't post pictures. Don't give them an identity online. Just don't do it.
Wow, that's
Debbie,
terrible. Oh my gosh.
it was terrible. It's terrible. Okay, so Debbie, you're up for Ticketmaster Entertainment. That's a big one.
Yeah, Ticketmaster. So this is pretty recent. So this happened, it came to light in last year, 2024. Ticketmaster, they found that they had leaked order history, payment information, names, address, email were leaked online and exfiltrated by hackers via the Ticketmaster system. And so that was like 560 million customers. One of the really interesting things that I found about this case is that I had a friend that her teen put, and I don't want to overly generalize, teens or young people. And I swear to myself, when I got older, I wouldn't call young people, but I'm doing it right now. I had a friend and her team got a notice saying that their stuff was breached via Ticketmaster. And a lot of times, she was saying normally they don't really care. They feel like, oh, I'm getting a service. I don't care. I sign up for this or that. But this person was like really concerned about that, right? This teenager. They're like, well, what are they going to do with my information? What does this mean? And so I think, back to your point about teens or young people who go to concerts and put their credit cards in, they should be concerned about these types of things because they can be, used in nefarious ways. Also, I want to say, and this happens a lot. So I watch a lot of the breaches and I try to look to see, what exactly happened. Because you get the big news story like, okay, this breach happened. But then I try to follow up and find out after a while as breadcrumbs come out about what exactly happened. And almost all of the time, these situations, they aren't like Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise hanging from the ceiling types of breaches. They're like, this data didn't have a high business value. We moved it to another server or another space that wasn't, highly active, not as secure. And, I always tell companies things that have a low business value have a high cyber or privacy risk because a hacker or someone who wants to do something nefarious with it, they don't have to break into, the vault, right? Because you have stuff that they want that they can use just laying around. So I think this is a good example of that.
It is, and the one thing I'm going to add to that is, the assets, again, back to the basics, identifying the assets, right, and locking even your backups up. Vendor management plays a really huge deal in this because when you receive that SOC 2, it says that subservice organizations are excluded. So if you're sending your vendor any of your data, the black hole is not knowing where they're sending your data downstream to their vendors. And that's usually an excluded gap that you see in contracts and that you see in SOC 2 SOC 2 reports. So dig very deeply into that one. Okay, I'm going to grab it. Thank you for the Ticketmaster one, Power School. A lot of people haven't heard about this one, but if you went to school anytime after 1985, your name's probably out there. So this is about 60 million individuals, mostly in the northern, this continent, the northern continent, right? A lot in Canada and in the U.S. Lot of critical information. So the basics, the name, the address, right? So you can create that geofence and tap into the houses, camera when the Wi-Fi hasn't, your IoT systems when your passwords haven't been updated. some of the bigger concerning areas are some of the data that you give to schools for if there are accommodation details that need to happen for your kids, allergies, medical allergies, right, doctor's name, emergency contact. So a lot of that information has also been exposed. So there are several lawsuits, and unfortunately, a lot of this stuff people kind of shrug and are like, "Well, I'm not going to participate this, and it doesn't really matter much." Um, Someone overheard a very high person in the local Los Angeles Unified School District saying, "Oh, sure, we lost a bunch of kids' data, but none of the parents sued us, so who cares?" Right? And the consumers don't want to go and actually pursue litigation because they might not have money because they think, well, my data is already out there anyway. So we're kind of stuck at this impasse in this industry where we're just really feeling just it's very limiting as far as what we think we can do as consumers. Unfortunately, Europe has a very strong way for consumers to enact their privacy rights. And although we have we're up to 19 states now here in the US, just a lot of companies aren't doing it. They're just like, they ignore those requests. Unfortunately, it's a very different mentality, right? So, Mike,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, you're up with AT&T.
Yeah, that Power School one was interesting because it started with just the phishing of the IT staff. But again, the common stuff. Next up, number 5, it's AT&T. So some of you on the call may be a customer, or some of their salespeople may have been speaking to you as you're trying to walk down the Costco aisles with your family and young children. Awfully specific example, I know. But in this particular one, it involves their Snowflake presence. So this is unique because AT&T, they're a service provider, a big one. They have some cloud services, but it wasn't even on their own. In this one, they were using Snowflake. So this one, the threat actor apparently got in around April 2022. It was disclosed around July of last year, 2024. You may have heard of this as part of the bigger Snowflake incident that lots of companies were involved, billions of records. This particular one for AT&T included 109 million customer records, including things like call and text metadata, location info. So again, like the Facebook one, this one also included no content, no folders, no files, no SSNs. So we might put our guard down, but there's a lot of stuff that can come from this because it's less desired. So the hackers may not be able to sell that information for as much as something that's a little bit more lucrative, but it can still be used to get both businesses and individuals through things like SIM swaps. So AT&T did have an FCC settlement as part of this for $13 million in 2024, as well as a class action settlements totaling around $177 million between last year and this year. As part of this, they tightened up their IAM controls, including things like least privilege, getting less people access to the environment. They beefed up multi-factor authentication like Snowflake did for pretty much all the other companies involved, because up till that point, Snowflake was leaving it up to the users to decide, as cloud companies do. But I think Snowflake didn't like that their name kept getting brought up about a breach that wasn't even their fault. They're the platform. They provided the MFA tools. Companies decided not to use them, yet still people are still calling it the Snowflake breach. So it's
basic access controls, number 1, right? Again, we're talking access controls. Number 2, what does your data classification policy actually dictate? Purging data and how you're going to purge that data. If there's no purposefulness to you holding that data, this is like the equivalent of when you were born, you probably had a onesie. So you better put that onesie in the closet and hold on to it in case you might use it again. Well, really? Why are we holding so much data in our environments that were literally not purging it, not destroying it based on policies, based on that data classification. Some of it you just write over. Some of it you got to really go through some serious destruction methods. Data purposefulness, data minimization, also supported by your data classification policy. Know your data and figure out then how to handle it from there. Thanks. That was a great one, Mike.
Yeah. So with that, they also reviewed their vendor agreements and they started monitoring more. But it goes back to the basics, and this sort of thing also needs to be covered in the incident response plan and playbook, because any company dealing with large amounts of data, this could happen, and you have to know how to respond to it.
Yeah. Good one. All right, Debbie, anything to add to that, or are you ready to talk about the national public data breach?
We can talk about national public data breach.
Go for it.
So the national public data breach is actually probably one of the worst breaches I've ever seen, and it's really interesting. So, National Public Data is a data broker company, and I'll explain data brokers in a second. And so this breach, it encompassed 2.9 billion records. So it's actually one of the biggest data breaches ever. And so they had stuff like people's, names, addresses, social security numbers, email, stuff like that. And so data broker, well, first of all, let me talk a little bit about kind of consumer privacy laws and why data brokers are a problem. So most consumer in the US, we have consumer data privacy laws. So just like you were saying, Mike, in the AT&T breach, if you're a consumer of AT&T, then they're responsible for the data that they have about you and how they protect it. Because National Public Data is a data broker, they basically scrape data from other places and they put it together and they create these profiles and they sell them, right? And the problem that we've had with consumer data protection laws is that those laws tend to assume that you have a relationship with the company that takes your data. And so data brokers, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's kind of underneath everything else and people don't even know. And so what happened is when they had this breach, they had to still, because they knew the people that they had these profiles for, they had to send them these notices, say, hey, we got breached. And people are like, who are you? Like, I don't know who you are. I don't know. What do you do? Why do you have my data? And a lot of times because these data brokers, they're scraping data from all different places. They're putting together. The stuff they may have may not be correct. You don't know how they're using it, because if they don't have a relationship with you, they don't really have an obligation outside of a couple other laws. Very, very few state laws, maybe in California, Vermont, where they want people to register data brokers. So I think it's incumbent upon companies to have data of people that they try to secure it the best they can, so it doesn't end up in a data scraping type of situation like what they've done. And so, this is still playing out. I think it's a very interesting case because it'll be a landmark case around data brokers, basically.
Big deal. Huge deal. All right. I just sent in the link in the chat to everybody, the listing of the state of California data brokers. It's a very important thing to understand that your everything, your activity online, everything you stream, everything you buy, you use a credit card, it creates minimum 6 data points, right? Where were you? What did you buy? DMV sells your data. They make over 2.5 million monthly, state of California, just on selling data. So data brokers buy that data. They crunch that data. They make predictive algorithms out of that data, and then they sell it out. And it's all about you. You're the star of all of that data. So it's important to understand that list that I just sent, the data broker registry in the state of California, forces the disclosure of who the data brokers are. Okay. I'm going to talk about something that personally affected me when I went to the grocery store. and I don't know how to say this word correctly. The company name is UNFI, so it's Unfi or Unfi or Unfi. I'm not sure, but they are a powerhouse player apparently for a whole bunch of grocery stores and retail. 30,000 chains and retail companies use their services, distribution, right, fulfillment, kind of ordering, all of these systems, in warehouse operations, deliveries. So when I go to the store and there are no eggs and there's no milk and and all of a sudden I see just empty shelves at Whole Foods. I kind of started digging as to what was going on. So this company called UNFI, so this is just a few months ago. This all happened in June. I think it actually happened twice, but they had unauthorized network activity. So that's a company disclosure. Their net sales actually, the reduction will be 350 to 4 million because of this, and their stock dropped 8%, and the company incurred 20 million in extra operational costs. So there is a law called NIS, NIS, and then the number 2, not NIST, like we all talk about, but NIS and then the number 2 in Europe, that really hyper focuses on supply chain. And we're not only talking your MSSP or your, common tool that you're using in your environment for computing functionality. We're actually talking about the stuff that gets added to your cauldron if you're making, your vats as you're making your medicine, and your parts as you're building cars, and your the actual equipment and the manufacturing things that go into your recipe to produce your product. So your supply chain, hand in hand with that vendor management, right, needs to be, again, inventoried, assessed against risk. How much of your core business would go away or be impacted if this vendor were to not be available for whatever reason, right? And figure out your business continuity measures around that. So huge costs and a lot of golden eggs in one basket in this situation with 30,000 companies. Again, you assume that everybody has the best intentions in mind as you go through that contractual kind of agreement, and you accept their SOC 2, and you think everybody's good, and that these guys, they're solid, right? I know they're protecting my data. I know they're taking care of it as carefully as I would have taken care of it. They might not even be holding on to it. They might be sending it to somebody else. So be really careful with the assumptions that you're making as you're vetting those contractors, and understanding that supply chain impact for your actual operations. Anything to add, Mike, Debbie?
Yeah, the vendor risk stuff is getting out of control. The way the world operates now, we use APIs a lot. We use a lot of SaaS platforms. This is such a big source of risk. And if this company has thousands of companies that they do business with, they're an obvious target in the supply chain. And this one was also due to phishing, vendor credential compromise, that hopefully they were probably thinking about cybersecurity before. But if anyone on the call is like sending a questionnaire to a company like this, one good question to ask is, are you going to share the data with anyone else? And that can solve a lot of the issues that Karina brought up, like the SOC 2 report that doesn't talk about the sub-processors. Just ask them. Because if they say yes, then you can say, well, who? And what are they going to do with it? And who do they give it to? The SOC 2 report doesn't have all the answers, but if you view it as a starting point, it can be quite useful.
Yeah. And I would also say that a lot of times companies, first of all, third-party risk is huge. And some companies, they think of, third parties mean bad, and that's not what we're trying to say, right? So all companies have third parties, but you have to figure out how to use them and figure out the best way to share data. The problem that companies have is they overshare information with third parties and they give them too much rights within their organization, because that means they have to do something different or do something special within their organization to really be able to share, and also being able to figure out what exactly does this third party need, right? So as opposed to, and I've seen this a million times, say, okay, you have a third party, you need them to access your system. They may just duplicate a profile within their organization that gives them access to almost everything, but you hope that they only use what you gave them, what you told them to do, and it just does not work that way. And so even
Right.
I'll even go back way back to like the Target breach. That was like that huge thing that happened a long time ago. And they were like, oh, well, this company, we gave them access, and then they got into these other systems. So it's like, well, how did they get into those other systems? That doesn't make any sense, right? So if they only had access to the one thing that you wanted them to have access to, that's different than giving them access to everything and just hoping that they don't look at anything else.
So I'm going to actually add in on that and say, what's even worse is, so a healthcare situation, national company, set up an API 8 years ago, sending data blindly, all of it. Here you go. We want you to do your job really, really well. So we're going to send you more than what you could possibly ever need. We're sending you all our data through an API. The contract and the relationship with that vendor they were sending everything to was severed 3 years ago. Did anyone ever turn off the API? Nope. Again, right. Inventory, right? Basic inventory. So, and actually, speaking of healthcare, I'm also going to add the HHS. I'm going to forward the HHS OCR breach portal link. And I would encourage you, before you go see your doctor, 80% of the entire U.S. population is currently under an active investigation by the HHS for health-related companies who have lost over 500 people's information. So please go see if your provider is on that list. Anyway, Debbie, you and I are next for E&Y. Do you want to start on that one, or do you want me to start?
Well, you start. You start.
Okay, this is a recent one, right? So this is just a few weeks ago. You guys, the super simplest, most basic common fail again, right? Back to the basics. They didn't do a restricted password on Azure. They dumped all this data on Azure. I think it was something like 6 terabytes or something, or 4 terabytes. I forgot exactly how much it was. So they did a backup onto Azure, and they left the folder public instead of locking it down. Least privilege permissions, good old common sense, basic stuff, right? Now, E&Y is saying there was no client data on there, and so this is kind of an internal thing, but there have been API keys, there have been cached authentication tokens, there have been service account passwords. So this thing in the press has really gotten hushed down. It just happened, I think, last week or the week before that. So definitely, another example of basic stuff, access control, basic stuff.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll add something else. So when companies went into the cloud, it's almost like they have an organization that has no walls now. And so a lot of these problems are happening because they don't know how to handle stuff in the cloud. So let's say this E&Y did this thing. They had a folder that had all this access. And let's say it was only internal within their company and it wasn't connected to the internet. So that means, let's say someone leaves the company, so then they will no longer have access to it because that stuff was inside the company, right? But because it's in the cloud now, companies aren't protecting. They're bringing their bad habits from on-prem into the cloud, and that's why a lot of these things are being exposed. And then now add another layer, and this is AI. So artificial intelligence companies are hoovering up as much data as possible off the internet. So they're looking for data. So as opposed to people are thinking, well, I can hide in plain sight. This folder is public. No one's looking for it. Yeah, someone's looking for it. And they want to try to take as much stuff as possible and monetize it and stuff like that. So companies that have data in the cloud and they're not protecting it the way, if they're using their old habits from their on-prem mind and they're not thinking about it in terms of the fact that, data is not in a castle. I always give this castle analogy, right? So you think, okay, I have tall walls, I have this moat. What you're not thinking about is that a drone is flying over your castle, right? And a lot of the problems that you have are inside the castle. So I think thinking differently about how your data is stored and how you're protecting is very important. And some of these things, to me, are because companies don't really think about data as a life cycle. So data has a life from cradle to grave. And so people are super good at collecting data and they're terrible at figuring out what happens to data. What happens when the purpose has expired? What happens if someone leaves the company? What happens if, this account does this X, Y, and Z? And so they never really think about that and they don't plan about that very well. And that's why a lot of these things almost all happen at kind of the end of the data life cycle.
Yeah, those are great points. To their credit, it appears the threat actor got in just in October, and they were discovered in October. So at least it didn't have like a year-long dwell time. But then when they say, "Oh, it wasn't client data; it was just company data," to me that doesn't make it a lot better because one, that's either important information. Or if you're saying it's not important information, then why are you still holding it? What are you doing with it? So there's really nothing they could say that has me like, oh, okay, cool. This is great news. But also it tells me that they're not using secure baselines or whatever type of data this is. This probably wouldn't happen. So either you have anything else before we move to the next one?
I think, well, go ahead. I have one thing to say. So I think when they say, oh, it wasn't customer data, what they're trying to say to regulators, like, don't come after us because there are all these customer laws, right? But all data within organizations need governance, regardless of regulation. So that's the part that they're missing in that conversation.
Yeah.
No, good information. Well, we've only got two left. This is my last one. And if you look at your keyboard, you'll see some of the name of this company. It's F5 Networks. And this was related to their big IP supply chain breach, which just really came out last month in October. And apparently they discovered that this happened just in August. So 2 years prior. And what's really concerning about this is that the threat actor is a nation state APT. So it's a state-backed organization, which they have a lot of resources and deep talent. So what happened is a nation state used some malware, which is like a backdoor, and it's called Brickstorm, and it's used for stealthy reconnaissance, lateral movement within the systems, data exfiltration, and it often targets source code and other highly sensitive information, as it did in this case. So F5, their source code and undisclosed vulnerability data for this big IP product line, which includes their networking hardware and software, which is there's about 600,000 devices out there. Last I checked from a couple sources, it's the best number I could find, were potentially impacted. And what's really scary about this is some of that is critical infrastructure around the world. So it's not just in this country. Monetary losses for this one are unknown at this point. It's expected to be tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. When this was announced, the stock price did dip 10% at the time, which equates to about $1.3 billion. So that's 10 figures of value impacted. So it shows the importance of this stuff. They did jump on this pretty quickly, which is important, especially at a company like theirs. They engaged external incident response teams. They conducted external audits of their development environment, the DevSecOps environment. They patched vulnerabilities. They verified that their code repos were locked down, and they also published advisories to anyone that's using F5 equipment that they should patch their systems ASAP. Which vendors will often say that when there's a breach. But it's especially important in this case because, as I said a few minutes ago, part of the data that was taken was undisclosed vulnerability data. So having the source code and that and vulnerability data, those threat actors are equipped to do a lot of damage. So F5 responded pretty well. They will need to do continuous monitoring of the situation, and users of F5 equipment should as well. So do either one of you have any thoughts on this one?
Well, I think some of the things, I think if companies lurch from one incident to the next, they're always going to be behind. So thinking about these things more proactively will help them respond better and help them make sure that they reduce their risk just in case something like this happens.
I agree. All right. I'm actually going to probably take a minute to sneak in another one after the CDK one. All right. Who uses cars and loves cars? I do. So we may have one in our garage or several, right? And we go see the dealer and we haggle and we make an afternoon out of it. And they try to, let us feel like we're walking out with a really, really great deal, right? And that we owe them and try to upsell us. So a little over a year ago, you may have heard CDK, right, got completely crippled. 15,000, over 15,000 car dealerships across the U.S. This lasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. So right now, Anderson Group actually estimates the losses are at about $1 billion with a B. There was a ransomware attack. So this one stems from ransomware-ish. So again, IDSs, IPSs, you may have them. They may send you logs. Are you looking at them? Do you have a process that actually manages the actual logs and gathering intelligence from those logs? And do you have someone assigned to actually escalate logs and create those alerts for your incident response plan, right? So a lot of us suffer from something called tool lard, where we have so many damn tools. We do swivel chair and nobody knows what is the proper source of truth. We're not centralizing this stuff, right? So make sure that as you're looking with, as you're dealing with external influences into your environment, that you know how to actually process those logs and gather intelligence from them. If you're not huge, if you don't have one of the big, software systems that actually provide this as a service. So there was a $25 million crypto transaction that was associated to one of the attackers' wallets as part of this. So CDK decided to, they paid the ransomware attacker, and there's different philosophies on this. Some dealers are saying that they're still kind of recuperating. So very, very big hit for anybody who wanted to service their car during that time or purchase a car during that time. Kind of had a backhanded effect also on the cost of cars, temporarily, because pretty much everybody was, 15,000 dealers. Think about that. All of Ford has 3,500 dealers across the U.S. All of Ford, right? And I did this research when I was buying my van. All of Dodge has 2,700 dealers across the U.S. So when you talk about 15,000 dealers in the U.S. being impacted by this, imagine the frozen kind of standstill that everybody was in while all of this was being remediated and involved. So can I sneak one more in? Go ahead. Please. Any feedback on that, Debbie? Or
I'll I'll add I'll add another layer to this, what people don't think about. So dealers have a lot of financial information. So people get loans and different things, and all that is part of those breaches. So even if you, let's say, if you went to get your car serviced, and they pull up your account, they know how many months you have left on your car. They know who the finance company is. They know your name, address, your phone number. All that information is actually in your car. People don't even know that. That's like a whole other thing we can talk about.
Yeah.
So a breach of a dealership system is a huge problem, because I think people just think, oh, they just know when I have my oil change. It's like, no, they know a lot more stuff, and it's connected into their systems and into cars as well.
Mike,
Yeah.
I know you and I talked about this one. You have a lot of opinions on this one.
Yeah, it's a big one, and some industries by their nature are going to be more technical than others. But like even like manufacturing, you might think of like some old assembly line, but then you see people on LinkedIn all the time talking about digital transformation. So with that's been going on for a number of years, and at this point, most industries are already tech enabled. And when you're tech enabled, that's good. You can automate a lot, but you also have to take the security and compliance issues into account, just like you're a bank. Maybe not as intense, but like an auto dealer network, they don't think about this stuff as much. They're not going to have the resources of a bank, and we can see the ripple effects of this software. It's been used at 15,000 locations, and as Karina pointed out, Ford only has 3,500, and they're one of the biggest companies. So this was a big single point of failure, and we need to think about this thing across sectors.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to sneak one in. So we get 11 for the price of 10. Thank you all for your time. Okay, this is a little troubling, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware of some of these health kind of devices and applications and systems that they subscribe to. They have women's menstrual things where, some of those are actually requesting the data of your partner, so that if you're late, the app can call your partner and say, hey, you may become a daddy. Like, I'm not kidding. It's wild. It's wild. Okay. So I'm serious. I wish I were kidding on this one. So there's a lot of, so just please be careful. I mean, and I wear an Oura ring. I don't tag any of my data. My number's dipped because I went out, got drunk last night, or my numbers dipped because of something else. So I don't actually tag any of my data. For people that do, please do that with caution. The one thing I'm going to really highlight, I'm going to go back to 23andMe. So this isn't related to personal health data. I want to make a bit of a correlation. It's a little frightening. 23andMe first announced their breach on October 6th. And the initial data repository that was stolen and hacked was over 1 million individuals identified as Jews. That was the initial data set. It's absolutely horrifying. And like every time I think about it, I get chills. It's the most frightening thing. Who knows what date the actual Jewish war started? In 2023, the next day, October 7th, you guys. So please be cognizant of the data that you're putting in, because if you're putting things in that could literally profile you this is the next day. The war in the Gaza Strip started October 7th. The day before, 1 million records were stolen from 23andMe that identified Jewish, I don't know, their patients, their customers of 23andMe, whatever you want to call them. It's a very, very frightening thought. People want to fling their data around and think, oh, it's already out there, not a big deal. Huge deal. If there's any correlation between these two events, who the hell knows? Maybe not. Maybe there is. However, just please be very, very careful of throwing out all of your identifiable information out there, and call your doctor and find out what they're doing with your data as well, please, because our kids' data is in there, their social security number. Why does your doctor need your social security number? Someone explain to me why your doctor needs, right? Why? For what reason?
Totally.
Well, so please be an advocate for your own data as much as possible. I implore you.
Yeah. And I'll just add to 23andMe. So terrible breach, terrible thing is happening. So there's something very important to understand about health data in the US. People do not understand. A lot of people think that anything about their health data is protected the same way, and it is not. So if you are a patient, go to a hospital or a doctor, you're a patient, you're in the US, your data is protected by HIPAA, right? And so that is a patient provider relationship, and it has much stronger, probably the strongest protections in the US around personal data. But when you sign up for something like 23andMe, that does not have HIPAA protection. So anything you do like that, so Fitbit, your Apple Watch, your Strava app, where you're, collecting your heart rate and is track your location, those have lesser protection, and it's not in some states, not any. So that's why the 23andMe thing was more scary, because a lot of that data people thought was protected in the same way that health data was, and it really isn't. Actually, there's a law in the U.S. in Illinois called the Biometric Information Privacy Act, and because the data that was collected for 23andMe was biometric, a lot of it. If you are an Illinois resident, 23andMe cannot sell your data, so they have to delete it. And so that's the only, if you're in Illinois and you were part of 23andMe, that helps you. But if you live in any other state, that's not going to help you. So they can still sell that data to someone else.
It's just horrific. It's horrific. Okay, thank you so much, Mike. You want to bring us to a close then?
Yeah, great examples. These 10 examples go to show that the intersection of cybersecurity, privacy, and fraud, the lines are blurred. And especially at bigger companies, you might hear someone in cybersecurity say, "Oh, that's privacy, not my job." Okay, whatever. First of all, I don't really like the "not my job" type people too much. But for your company as a whole, you got to look at those blind spots, those gray areas, and figure out a plan to close those gaps, because if not, the threat actors are going to target them. And there's a lot of monetary issues, reputation issues that come into play, like these 10 companies experienced. But to close this out, Debbie, thanks so much for joining us. Do you have any closing words for the audience, and where would you like them to find you?
Oh, thank you so much. I would say governance is the key. All of these things really highlight why governance is really important, and thinking about things proactively and not having a knee-jerk reaction is the way to go. So people can find me on LinkedIn. You can just type in Data Diva, Debbie Reynolds. My name pops right up. I have a website called DebbieReynoldsConsulting.com. I also have a podcast called the Data Diva Talks Privacy Podcast. So we have listeners in 155 countries.
Beautiful, wonderful.
That's incredible. That's most countries. Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. Karina, same with you. Any final words, and where would you like the audience to find you?
Well, maybe one day we'll go to a few countries, but I don't know if we could ever do 155. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. I can be found at Karina at clevercompliance.com, or we do have a new website, or a rebranded website. Please take a look. It's clevercompliance.com. Also very active when I can be on LinkedIn. So please follow the company and send us your inquiries. We'd love to help you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Karina. It's been a pleasure as usual. If anyone would like to connect with me, LinkedIn is my go-to. And then again, we really appreciate it if you could follow us on YouTube. There'll be some more content going on there. We're currently stuck at like 60 subscribers, even though these webinars get like 900 people RSVPing. So help us out. Help us pass the basket weaving pages on there. Just kidding. But thank you all for attending today. We know you have a lot of other stuff going on. It means a lot, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, guys.